Okay, so you can see I've now added the fields for both the main policyholder and their spouse. And I'll just quickly just show an edit here just so you can see that I've mapped this to spouse company. So all these are available in the drop down. If you look, you'll see all the mappings to the various fields. So I didn't want to take you through that because it's quite long. Now what I'm going to do is add just one last thing for the additional tab. What I'm going to do is take the description. I'll put that into the I'm going to allow them to put in additional information. I'll store that in the description field for the main policyholder. So in this case, I'm going to use a text box. So I'm going to add that here. You'll see in this case, the fields are slightly different. So I'm going to call this additional description. I'll just put description. I'm going to say that it's not required. The height is going to be 5 characters high, and the width should be about 100, maybe call it 150 characters wide, and the maximum size of the text we'll store in there again will be 255. We might want to store more than that, but let's keep it for now. And then let's map that to the description field, and again we'll put a little helper information there. So that's basically the layout, and you can kind of get a sense of how you lay out an application. You can see how quickly you can build a page layout that allows you to do multiple columns, multiple kind of layout types very, very quickly. What's great about these layouts is that they're responsive. So when this layout is used on a large screen, it will take up all the available space. If it's used on a small device, we can actually easily make decisions on how best to optimize this layout for the device and form factor that's available, and that's what our player technologies do. So I'm just going to save this layout. Okay, now the page layout is saved. Actually, what we should do is start thinking about creating a flow to leverage all the hard work that we just put into our flow here. So again, I'm going to show you a few features that you may not be as familiar with in building a flow. So first step is I'm going to create my new flow. So I'm going to call the flow claim. Oh, sorry, I'll get there. I'm going to pick the Salesforce service for our identity, for our objects, and for our type. So we've got all that kind of lead information that we can use. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this claim flow. Now this is a flow for submitting new claims, names as leads. Okay, and as before, we're just going to take the authentication of being all the Salesforce users in that org, and we're going to create a new collaboration stream for them as part of the application. So the application is social. We'll just save that. Now what you see is since the first version we let out, we only had the step. Now we have this page element, and we also have a database save element. Obviously, we're taunting you by only releasing these elements one by one or very slowly. But what's important to note is the things that appear here on the left-hand bar are the things that are specific to your flow. The things that appear on the top bar are things that are global. So first thing we need to do for this flow is we need to import our service. So I'm going to import the Salesforce service into the flow. And what that does is that tells the system that our flow, which is our claim flow, is dependent on the Salesforce service for information. What that means is it automatically imports in all of our types from Salesforce, so we have them. Those are brought into our flow also, so we can use those. And then it's also, we can now bring in our values. So it's brought in the values that were dependent on the service for the configuration. I also now need to import in the values that we created for the policy holders. So I'm going to import the main and import in the spouse. Okay, so we're using those two values now. And what this means is over time, and we're still adding this, is we can do validation. So when you're using these shared values, one is it means you can standardize. So if you have different claim processes, you can still use those same claim values. But equally, we can check for dependencies across applications. So if you make changes, we can make sure that it doesn't break things. That validation is not yet in the engine, but that is currently being developed. And also now we just need to bring in our page layout. So like before, we can have page layouts as a resource that we can use in many applications. So as we build up more apps, we may go, well, actually, let's use the this claim layout that we did, this policy page layout that we did, in lots of different apps, which means that we can manage that layout across multiple applications at the same time, which is just handy. What we're really trying to do is encourage a best practice architecture for reuse, so that over time you have a maintainable system and not something that kind of gets out of whack. So, right, so we have our starter element as usual. Let's create a first just standard step. And a step doesn't, as before, doesn't really do a lot. It's just really just information that could be presented to the user. So, so it's going to ask the user what do they want to do. You know, what do you want to do? This might be a home screen that you get on the application when you first log in. Again, it's just an example. It's just asking the user, you know, what do they want to do, and then they can choose an outcome from that. So, first thing we'll do is say from the start we'll go to our step, and we'll just kind of give it an outcome of go. Right. So as before, the flow of logic will be the app starts and it goes to that screen to say, what do you want to do? And now we've got to do is, what are they going to do? What we should do is we should say, well, let's give them that page layout to create a new, a couple of prospects or a couple of leads in Salesforce. So first thing we do is we say, well, which page layout do you want to use? We want to use the policy page layout. And then we just hit next, and we just need to give it a name. This is going to be expanded quite a bit as we roll out through to GA, in that you will be able to now bind buttons to your page layouts. You can add action buttons at various positions on your page layout. So that is coming. But let's just enter policy holders. Step to enter policy holders. Okay, that's all it does. So at this step, it's going to present that page layout to the user so they can enter in their policy holders. So all we're going to do here is create an outcome. So this will appear as a button on the screen as so to the question of what do you want to do in that first operation step, we'll just say, you know, add policy holders. That will appear as a button to the user of the app so that they can now add the policy holders into the system. Let me just move that out a little bit. And then what I'll then do is now I'm going to add another step after this, which is going to be a button that will appear on this screen of policy holders, and we'll have that so it actually goes and saves the policy values back into Salesforce. So it's important to kind of think that the page layouts are not immediately saving values back into Salesforce. You have to actually set a point to save the values into Salesforce. So I'll show you how you do that now. So go to save, drag that in, and I'm going to call it save policy holders. And what we'll do is we will create a new database save action. So we're going to select, we want to save an object. As you may remember, we have the two objects, which are the main policy holder and the spouse. So let's select that we want to save the main policy holder at this step. We hit next. And now the system's asking us to give the data action a name. So we'll call it save main. And then we just select which binding we want to save it using. If you've installed the Salesforce service pre this release, you'll just see lead there. We updated the name just to make it a little nicer. But so you can imagine now we might have had a binding for SAP. So we just simply say, hey, save that to Salesforce. So it's very straightforward. You just simply say, just save it. And then where do you want to save it? In this case, I want to save it to Salesforce. I might want to save something to Concur, save it to Workday, whatever. So it's going to apply that. And we're also going to save the other policy holder. You'll remember that we had the two values were being populated from that one form. So in this case, we're going to take the spouse this time, and we'll save them now also back to Salesforce. I mean, you might have an app where it says actually save one of them to Salesforce and one of them to SAP. I can't imagine why you do that, but let's see, save spouse. And again, we'll use our Salesforce lead binding. Okay, so we've got basically now we're saving both our objects back to Salesforce. Those will then appear as records, two lead records inside Salesforce with that one save event. So what we'll do is we'll add an outcome for the user to say save. Okay, so when they hit save, it will navigate down to the save event, and then we can then take them back perhaps to the main screen. Okay. So a little syncing issue there. Right, so that's our app now. So what we can do, now that we've got that all wired together, let's run it and give it a try and see how it works. Okay, so our flow has built and is now running, and we can now log in to the flow using our Salesforce user credentials. So we have to log in as a user of Salesforce as before. So I'm going to log in using my credentials as a Salesforce user. Again, if you've gone through the first tutorial, you'll have done this before with the modem, the router troubleshooting guide. So now just log in as the user, and it will start loading the application. So you'll see immediately we've got that action button saying, what do you want to do? Add policy holders. So where we are right now is we're looking at this screen, and that button is represented by this arrow. If we click on that button, we should be taken to this page, which will then show us the page layout that we did for the two policy holder values that we're going to populate. So add policy holders. And you'll see we've laid it out. So the group now has become the policy tab, you can see, and the additional tab. So you can see we've added the layout as we specified. You're not seeing all the different containers, but you can see now how it all works. We've got the group became tabs, the main and the spouse became two columns, and that and then we had the vertical layouts which set out these fields, and that within each of those vertical layouts we had this inline layout, which meant the fields come side by side, which means they're effectively squashed side by side as much as possible. If we put it in a horizontal layout, then these fields would all be kind of aligned in tables in a row. So that gives you a sense of how you lay out a particular application. And that's it for this demo. I've got a shorter version that just shows the running of this application and some of the features of this application, particularly its real-time capabilities. Thank you.